The twin suns over Vanar cast a pale light across the council citadel. The building drifted in a soft orbit and looked like a ring made of glass. Inside, voices rose and fell as envoys and officers argued about a strange signal at the edge of mapped space. Most speakers were calm. Some were nervous. Few wanted to admit what they felt. The signal frightened them. It came in like a clean knife through cloth. It appeared and then vanished. It left a wake that old instruments could not explain. In the chamber, Admiral Karen Mitchell stood near a tall window and watched the suns. She kept her face calm even as she thought through dozens of plans. She had served on many borders. She had seen empty outposts, broken stations, and fleets that came out of nowhere. This felt different. It felt like a door opening in a place where no door should exist. Daniel Harris stepped beside her. He was not in uniform. He had once flown scouts for the outer ranges and now worked as an analyst for the council. He had a quiet voice and a way of noticing small things that others forgot. He carried a slim case under his arm and a tablet in his hand. He did not bow. He did not try to sell his view. He simply spoke. He said the signal had a human pattern. He said he had seen a similar shape in very old files that most people never read. He said those files used a single old word that made some elders shift in their seats. The word was Earth. Karen did not answer at once. She asked him to show the records. He loaded a narrow set of pages. The documents were simple and full of gaps. The people who wrote them had lived through hard times. They spoke of a world that had gone dark on purpose. They spoke of a species that left crowded lanes and hid behind false routes and decoys. They said the species needed time to heal and rebuild after long wars. They wrote that the species would return only when they were ready. The pages did not say when that would be. The pages did not say how they would do it. The pages only said this: when Earth returns, do not greet them with fear or pride. Greet them with care. Across the chamber, Ambassador Lyrix of the Drellin made a crisp speech. Lyrix said the anomaly was a trick by raiders or a burst of random energy. He said there was no proof to link it to an old rumor about a lost world. He asked for calm. He asked for patience. He asked to send a small patrol and nothing more. Many nodded. The hall liked simple orders. Simple orders felt safe and tidy. Karen did not nod. Daniel did not nod either. They had both seen what happened when leaders chose tidy stories and ignored the harder ones. A thin chime sounded. A wall screen lit up with a star map of the border. A quiet voice from the listening array reported a second event. The same cut in space had opened again near the Ceres belt. This time it stayed open for 9 seconds. This time the sensors saw mass move through the cut. The array could not label the object. It was large and made of heavy metals that did not match common builds. The object slowed to a glide and then drifted under its own power. It sent out no call. It did not ask for lanes or port rights. It was just there. A new thing where there had been nothing. Karen spoke 3 words. Show me everything. The screens changed again. A grainy shape filled the air and slowly sharpened. The room went quiet. The ship was long and sharp like a blade with flat armor faces and thick ribs along the spine. It had no curved fins. It had no crest with a proud emblem. It looked like a tool built for purpose and not for show. Along its hull, the cameras picked up white stencils in a human alphabet. There was a simple name printed near the bow. The name read Horizon. That was all. No bright crest. No claim of empire. Only that one word. On the ship itself, Captain Laura Bennett stood on a command deck that was narrow and efficient. The forward window was a band of armored glass with reinforcement lines like the strings of a musical instrument. Her bridge team moved with quiet focus. Mark Rivera watched the gunnery board with a steady hand. Claire Donovan handled nav and scanned the drift of rocks and dust in the belt. A soft hum came from the rail systems deep in the hull. It was the kind of hum that most people forgot after years at sea. Laura did not forget. She listened to it as if it were a heartbeat. She took in the screen data. She kept her voice even. She had led crews through storms and hard routes for a long time. She knew fear could rise fast if a captain overreacted. Laura asked for a status report. Claire said the transit gate had closed clean. No wake trace behind them. No pursuit. Mark said weapons were cold and safe. He said the coils were stable. He said the magazine locks were sealed. Engineering reported that the spine had held firm during the jump, though the aft plates would need a check when they found a safe lane. Laura nodded. She said they would keep power at half while they tested the local physics. She said to keep the broadcast quiet. She said to listen before speaking. The bridge team understood. They had trained on that rule since their first day. Listen first. Back at the Citadel, the council had split into circles. Each circle gathered behind a speaker who argued for a plan. One circle wanted to send a greeting fleet with bright banners and many cameras. Another wanted to send a warning with a heavy escort. A third whispered that they should do nothing and let the unknown ship drift until it left. Karen asked for the floor. She said the ship had not fired. She said it had not made demands. She said it had chosen a quiet path through a belt, which was a cautious choice. She asked them to send a small team with a clear and honest message. She asked them not to stage a show. She asked them not to act from fear. Lyric smiled, but it was the kind of smile people wear when they do not plan to listen. He moved to table her motion. Daniel did something unusual for him. He raised his voice. He reminded the chamber of the old pages. He said fear would make them seem weak. He said pride would make them seem foolish. He said every alarm in him told him the ship was human. He said if it was human, then they had to measure every word with care. He used no clever tricks. He used simple words. He used the truth. For a small moment, the room paused. For a small moment, even Lyrics looked unsure. Karen took that moment and pressed the vote. The motion passed by a slim margin. A small team would go. Karen would lead it. Daniel would go as her analyst. The team left within an hour. Their shuttle was plain and unarmed. It carried bright running lights and an open call channel. Karen sat in the front seat and watched the belt drift by. The rocks moved like slow fish. She felt the quiet steady her nerves. Daniel checked the scanner and marked the ship's likely drift line. The horizon did not dance around or weave. It moved with purpose. It sought a lane where it could see and be seen. That told him something about the captain. It told him the captain did not want to hide. It told him the captain would accept a talk if the talk felt fair. On the horizon, Claire saw the shuttle long before it came within hailing range. She marked its path and let the computer build a prediction of its arrival time. She showed the data to Laura. Laura studied the shuttle's lights and its open call signature. She asked communications to open a narrow band. She spoke in a clear and plain tone. She said this was Captain Laura Bennett of the ship Horizon. She said the ship meant no harm. She said the ship sought safe passage and a standard talk with local rulers. She said the ship would hold position and maintain weapon safety while the talk took place. Then she waited. Sometimes the hardest part of command was the wait between words. Karen heard the human voice and felt the breath leave her in a soft sigh. She had known it would be human, but knowing and hearing are different. She answered in the same plain tone. She said she was Admiral Karen Mitchell on a council shuttle. She said she wished to meet within the belt where both ships could see the rocks and know there was no trap. Laura agreed. She set a point near a trio of large stones shaped like steps. Navy crews often called these steps the Stairs of Ceres. They gave good cover if pirates came, and they offered clean lines of sight if a talk went bad. Laura chose a place where fairness was built into the geometry of space. The two craft approached the meeting point and stopped at a careful distance. The shuttle sent a small tether of light that projected a virtual room between the hulls. It was a method used in mixed talks when two crews did not want to board each other. Laura walked into the projection room. Karen walked into the same from her side. Their boots clinked on their own decks, but in the shared space they stood face to face. Daniel and Claire watched from the edge of the field. Mark monitored the coils and the shield control in case someone made a bad choice. Laura spoke first. She said she was from Earth. She did not offer more yet. She wanted to see how the word landed. Karen did not flinch. She said the council had kept records and had heard the stories. She said the galaxy had not known where Earth had gone. She said she was glad to speak like this. Laura nodded. She said Earth had needed time. She said her crew had trained for years in quiet places far from busy lanes. She said they were cautious because they had seen what fear and pride could do to good people. She said they wanted to learn the new rules without forcing anyone to bend. Karen asked a few careful questions. She asked what the Horizon sought now. Laura said she wanted to map transit nodes to judge which were safe, and to find ports where her ship could trade for parts and food. She said her crew would pay fair and would not ask for special rights. She said if a port did not wish to host them, they would. The suns of Vanar burned behind the council citadel as the session continued late into the night. The chamber was tired, yet no one wanted to leave. Every envoy and commander wanted to speak about the strange ship that had appeared from nowhere. Reports had been collected from Admiral Karen Mitchell's first meeting with the crew of the Horizon. Some envoys were calm, others were shaken. The words from Earth repeated again and again through the air. To many it was only a name from myths. To a few it was a warning made real. Ambassador Lyrics was first to argue. He said the Horizon was only one ship. He said no one should fear it, and that it should be paraded before the galaxy as a guest of the Council. He wished to show the galaxy that the Council could greet even legends without bending. Others disagreed. Elder Soren of the Vare asked why a ship that large and armed with strange weapons would travel alone, unless there were more waiting. She reminded them of old stories that described Earth as a place of endless war and survival. She asked if the ship might only be a scout, and whether an entire fleet could appear next. Karen sat and listened. She had already sent her report. She knew what she had seen. She had seen a careful captain who wished for peace but carried enough firepower to shake entire fleets. Daniel Harris sat beside her and made notes on a small tablet. His words were clear and simple. Do not provoke, do not parade, do not assume weakness. He knew the Council liked easy answers, but this was not an easy problem. On the Horizon, Captain Laura Bennett met with her officers. The crew was calm but alert. Mark Rivera had checked the gunnery systems twice, even though they had not taken real damage from the pirate attack. Claire Donovan had mapped the belt and the nearby stars, creating a new set of charts that would feed into Earth's hidden archives once the ship returned. Laura asked them for their thoughts. Mark said the galaxy would test them soon. Claire said the Council would argue about them and then make a show. Laura nodded. She said they must be ready for both welcome and hostility. She reminded them of their training, of their years spent in the silence of hidden stations where they had drilled in patience. She said patience was their strongest weapon now. News spread quickly through the trade routes. Traders spoke of a ship with armor that could shrug off fire. They spoke of railguns that could tear through fleets with one strike. They told stories of pirates who had faced the Horizon and fled. With every telling, the story grew larger. Some claimed the ship carried weapons from a forgotten age. Some said its captain could split stars. Others laughed, but even laughter carried unease. Fear does not need truth to spread. The Council finally sent a message to the Horizon. They asked Captain Bennett to come to a neutral station near the borders. They promised a safe port and a fair meeting. Laura agreed, but only under strict terms. She said her ship would remain outside the station. She said she would come with a small escort. She said she would not disarm, for her ship had traveled too far and trusted too little. The Council debated but finally accepted, for they did not want the galaxy to think they were afraid. When the Horizon arrived near the station, fleets from several races were already there. Their ships shined with banners and lights. They wanted to impress and to remind all who watched that the Council still held power. The Horizon did not shine. Its hull was dark, scarred by old service, built with sharp lines and clear purpose. It moved into position with a steady glide and stopped just outside the docking ring. For hours, thousands of eyes watched the human ship through long-range screens. Inside the station, Karen prepared for the formal meeting. She wore her plain uniform. Daniel walked with her carrying simple records. They did not want to dress their words in banners or empty symbols. When Laura arrived with Mark and Claire at her side, the room grew silent. She walked with the calm of a soldier, not with the pride of an emperor. Her eyes moved across the room and fixed on Karen. She nodded once in respect. Karen nodded back. The talks began with polite greetings. Lyric spoke of peace and cooperation, but his voice was heavy with pride. Laura answered with short phrases. She said she came from Earth. She said her people had been silent for many years but had not been broken. She said they had trained, built, and prepared. She did not say how many ships they had. She did not say where their home was hidden. She only said humanity had returned and wished for fair trade and fair respect. Some envoys pressed for more. They asked about Earth's fleets. They asked how many soldiers they had. They asked where their stations were built. Laura answered with patience. She said she could not share those numbers. She said trust must be built slowly. She said the Horizon was a first step, not a final one. Some envoys grumbled, but Elder Soren gave a small nod. She had seen many captains in her time. She saw the steadiness in Laura's words. The meeting ended without violence, but tension was clear. Outside, fleets remained on watch, their weapons silent but ready. On the horizon, Mark checked the sensors again and again. He told Laura that some of the fleets had shifted closer during the talks. Laura told him not to react unless they fired. She said fear makes hands twitch. She said they must be the calm in the storm. Days passed. The horizon stayed near the belt, mapping and learning. Claire built charts of hidden nodes, small cracks in space that no one else seemed to notice. She told Laura that Earth's engineers had found ways to slip through places where other ships saw only darkness. Laura told her to record everything. She said the galaxy might watch them, but they would watch the galaxy too. Meanwhile, rumors spread inside the council. Some said Earth would return with a fleet large enough to crush every power. Some said Earth was weak and only sent one ship to scare children. The truth was hidden in the silence of the horizon's hull. Karen argued again for calm. She said the humans had not attacked without reason. She said they had fought pirates only to defend the council's shuttle. She said the best way forward was not war but patience. Lyric sneered and said patience was weakness. The chamber split again, fear against reason. Then came the incident that changed everything. A fleet from the Voran Alliance decided to act without council order. 60 ships heavy with weapons moved into the Ceres belt. They claimed they wished to inspect the horizon. They claimed they had rights to control the belt. In truth, they wanted to show power. They wanted to prove the human ship was only myth. Laura stood on her bridge and watched the fleet approach. Her crew looked at her, waiting for orders. She did not raise her voice. She said, "Hold position." She said, "Keep weapons cold but ready." She said, "Wait until they fire first." Mark's hands trembled as he set the gunnery board to active. Claire whispered the incoming vectors. The Voran ships spread in an arc, surrounding the horizon like hunters around prey. The lead Voran captain sent a harsh message. He said the horizon must cut its engines and submit to inspection. Laura replied with calm. She said no inspection would take place. She said her ship was sovereign. She said she wished no harm but would defend if attacked. The Voran captain laughed and ordered his ships closer. Their weapons warmed and the hum of their drives echoed through the belt. Laura breathed once, then gave the order. Weapons online. Mark unleashed the railguns. They sang like thunder through the void. Rounds tore across the arc, smashing through shields as if they were glass. Claire directed the maneuvers, guiding the horizon between incoming fire. The ship rolled, angled, and struck again. Each shot was precise, not wasteful. Within minutes, Voran ships cracked and spun out of formation. Explosions lit the rocks of the belt like false suns. But Laura showed restraint. She targeted engines and weapons rather than cores. She left many ships alive, damaged but not destroyed. She wanted them to see her power without being wiped away. Still, the Voran fleet could not withstand the assault. They broke formation and fled. Their captain shouted curses and promises of revenge as his ship limped away. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The horizon had stood alone against 60 ships and driven them into ruin. The council chamber was silent when the reports arrived. Even Lyrics could not find words. Karen looked at Daniel and saw both fear and hope in his eyes. She whispered that the galaxy would never be the same again. On the horizon, Laura gathered her crew. She told them they had proven their strength, but strength alone was not their purpose. She said their purpose was survival, respect, and the chance for Earth to walk among the stars again. She told them they must be ready for more challenges, for fear would spread faster than respect. The crew nodded. They had lived with silence for generations. Now they would live with the weight of every eye in the galaxy upon them. And so the horizon sailed on, scarred but unbeaten, carrying the name of Earth into a galaxy that now whispered its return with awe and dread. The horizon drifted beyond the Ceres belt, its hull scarred by recent battle but still strong. The crew worked quietly to repair plates and recheck systems. Inside, the mood was steady, though everyone understood the weight of what had happened. They had faced 60 ships and had not fallen. That story was now racing across the galaxy. Traitors carried it in whispers, pirates told it with fear, and council envoys argued about it with shaking voices. For many, it was proof that Earth had returned not as rumor, but as fact. Captain Laura Bennett stood on the forward deck, watching the slow turn of the stars. Mark Rivera joined her after finishing checks on the gunnery systems. His hands still carried a faint tremor from the fight, though his eyes were steady. He told her the railguns were clean, the coils firm, and the ammunition safe. He said they could fight again if needed. Laura nodded and told him she hoped it would not be soon. She said their power was clear now. and sometimes clear power was enough to hold off another battle. Claire Donovan walked in next, holding new charts. She had been working without rest, mapping routes, nodes, and drift lanes around the belt. She told Laura that she had found at least 3 paths the Horizon could use to vanish if fleets tried to trap them again. She said Earth's engineers had hidden clever ways into their designs, ways no one else had thought to try. Laura smiled and said that was why she trusted Claire. She told her to keep building maps because maps were weapons too. On the Council Citadel, silence had fallen after the defeat of the Voran fleet. The chamber had not known such silence in centuries. Some envoys wanted to hide the news, but the galaxy already knew. Others wanted to call for war, but their voices sounded weak after the strength the Horizon had shown. Karen Mitchell sat among them, speaking little but watching everything. She saw the fear in their eyes. She saw how fear twisted into anger, then into pride, then back into silence. She knew fear was the strongest force in the room. Daniel Harris wrote his notes with calm hands. He marked the same phrase again and again. Humans showed restraint. He wanted it remembered. He wanted history to say that Captain Bennett had not destroyed all 60 ships, though she could have. He wanted it written that she had chosen to cripple and not to kill. He believed this mattered even if many in the chamber did not want to see it. Ambassador Lyrics rose and spoke again. He said the Horizon was a threat that must be crushed before it grew. He said Earth would bring ruin just as the old stories said. He asked for fleets to be gathered, for alliances to be forged, for every ship to prepare for war. Some envoys clapped in agreement. Others stared at the floor. Elder Soren raised her voice and said Lyrics was a fool. She said war against Earth would be suicide. She reminded them of what had happened in the Belt. She said she had seen such discipline only a few times in her life, and it always ended with the side of discipline rising higher than the side of fear. The chamber split again. No answer reached, no peace found. Karen stood and asked for one more chance. She said the humans had come with patience. She said they had spoken clearly of trade, of fairness, of respect. She said if the council answered with fear and guns, then the galaxy would pay the price. She asked them to give space for talks. Some listened, some did not. But her words were carried into the records, and Daniel made sure they were not forgotten. Meanwhile, the Horizon continued its mission. It moved from system to system, careful and steady. It never fired first. It spoke in calm tones. It showed maps and offered charts to small stations in exchange for food and parts. Slowly, a few began to see the humans not only as warriors but as travelers. At one lonely outpost, a trader named Alan Pierce shook hands with Laura and whispered that his grandmother had told him old tales of Earth. He said she always believed they would return. Laura said his grandmother had been right. Mark spent long hours training the younger gunnery crew. He told them that power was not about pressing the trigger, but about knowing when not to. He said restraint was strength. The younger crew listened. They had seen the battle. They had felt the coils hum like thunder. They knew what the ship could do. Claire spent her nights adding details to her charts. She marked hazards, lanes, and safe ports. She said the maps were not only for them, but for the ones who would follow. She believed more ships would come one day. In the galaxy, fear spread, but so did respect. Some pirate clans vanished from borders where the Horizon was said to roam. Merchants changed their routes to follow in its shadow. Some small species who had long been bullied sent secret messages, asking if Earth would help them. Laura read those messages and felt the weight of choice. She told her crew they could not promise everything. She said they must stay focused on survival. She said they must first prove that Earth could stand in the open once more. But not everyone wanted peace. In hidden chambers, factions of the council plotted. They whispered that Earth must be stopped before it grew too bold. They planned secret missions, covert ships, and traps. They hired spies to learn where Earth was hidden, yet Earth had hidden well. For generations they had lived behind smoke and shadow, their world shielded by tricks no outsider understood. The council could not find them. This only deepened the fear. Back on the Horizon, Laura called her crew together in the mess hall. She spoke plainly. She said the galaxy would test them again and again. She said fear would push fleets at them, but they must hold steady. She said every action they took would write Earth's story for centuries. She asked them to remember that. She asked them to be proud but not proud enough to lose sight of who they were. The crew clapped softly, not out of noise but out of unity. They understood. Karen, still on the Citadel, faced pressure from every side. Lyrics demanded she step aside, that someone harder take her place. But she did not yield. She wrote her reports and sent them to every corner of the council archives. She spoke to small envoys, to traitors, to anyone who would listen. She told them what she had seen in Laura's eyes, not a conqueror but a survivor. Daniel supported her with quiet words and careful notes. They both knew the council might ignore them, but they also knew truth sometimes grows in silence until it cannot be denied. One evening, Daniel told Karen a thought that had haunted him. He said the greatest fear of the council was not Earth's weapons but Earth's spirit. He said they feared a people who had endured in silence and returned stronger than before. He said weapons can be copied but spirit cannot. Karen nodded and said that was why they must be careful. She said if spirit met pride, it would end in ruin for the whole galaxy. The horizon sailed on. It crossed through a cluster of stars where no other ship dared to go. It passed through storms of dust and lightning, testing its shields and engines. Each trial was a lesson. Each lesson was stored, recorded, and remembered. The crew kept their discipline. They lived with the hum of the rails, the glow of the screens, the endless dark around them. They knew history was watching. And beyond every system, beyond every debate, beyond every rumor, one truth began to settle across the stars. Earth was no longer a myth. Earth had returned. The horizon was proof, a single ship carrying the weight of a whole world. Some called it a threat. Some called it hope. But no one could deny it. From nowhere, a human warship had appeared, and the galaxy would never be the same. The horizon traveled through the quiet lanes beyond the Ceres belt, its hull still scarred yet steady. The ship had become a moving story. Traders whispered its name at ports, and children repeated it in markets. Some spoke of fear, others of awe, but no one denied it. Earth had returned, and its shadow stretched across the stars. Inside the ship, the crew lived each day with discipline. They worked, repaired, and trained. They knew their ship was not just steel, but also a message. Every action they took would shape how the galaxy remembered humanity. Captain Laura Bennett rose early each day and walked the forward deck. She looked at the stars as if searching for answers. She thought of Earth, of the families waiting, of the silent promise that the horizon carried. Mark Rivera trained the gunnery teams again and again. He taught them calm hands, steady breath, and patience. He told them the battle was not in the trigger, but in the choice to hold it. Claire Donovan mapped new lanes with endless care, marking every hazard and hidden node. She told the crew that maps were lifelines and that one day other human ships would follow her paths. The galaxy did not rest. In the council citadel, anger and fear twisted the chamber. Ambassador Lyrics demanded war. He said the horizon was a spark that would grow into fire. He said if they did not act now, Earth would spread like a storm. Elder Soren stood against him. She said the horizon had shown restraint, that it had not destroyed when it could have. She said restraint was not weakness but strength. Karen Mitchell added her voice, telling the chamber that the humans had come with caution, not conquest. Daniel Harris supported her with notes and quiet facts, reminding everyone that the humans had defended council lives against pirates. Yet pride and fear carried more weight than reason. The chamber split into factions, some demanding attack, others calling for patience. In hidden rooms, plans were made. A faction of council leaders agreed to test the horizon again. They did not want to wait for more human ships to appear. They wanted to break the symbol before it grew too powerful. They prepared a secret fleet, not 60 ships this time, but nearly 100. They called it a defensive maneuver, but it was built for assault. The ships moved quietly, their signals masked, their routes hidden. Only a few in the chamber knew, and those who did stayed silent, afraid to be called weak. On the horizon, Laura sensed the tension building. Reports from traders hinted at unusual fleet movements. Claire confirmed that patrol routes had shifted in strange ways. Mark said the pattern felt like a net drawing tight. Laura gathered her officers in the briefing room. She told them the galaxy was restless. She told them another test might come. She asked them if they were ready. They answered with steady voices that they were. When the fleet finally came, it came without warning. 100 ships surrounded the horizon near the rim of a dusty starfield. Their weapons were hot, their engines burning bright. They sent a single message: surrender or be destroyed. Laura stood on her bridge and listened. She did not flinch. She told her crew to prepare. She said they would not surrender. She said they would fight, but they would fight with discipline. Mark took his place at the gunnery board. Claire managed the navigation, her fingers flying as she mapped routes through the dense dust. The horizon hummed with power as coils charged and shields came alive. The fleet moved in, firing bursts of energy that shook the field. The horizon returned fire with railguns that cracked like thunder. Rounds tore through ships, not to destroy them all but to scatter, to break formations, to show control. The battle was fierce. Dust clouds lit up with explosions. Shattered hulls spun into the dark. Yet the horizon moved with calm precision, slipping through gaps, striking where it mattered most. Laura gave no order for total destruction. She told Mark to aim for engines, for weapons, to disable, not to kill. The fight lasted hours. When it ended, the fleet was broken. Ships fled in every direction, leaving wrecks and silence behind. News of the battle spread even faster than the last. The council chamber shook with the weight of it. Lyric screamed for vengeance, but his voice sounded hollow. Elder Soren said the truth was clear. Humanity could not be crushed. Karen repeated her plea for peace, reminding them again of the restraint shown. Daniel told anyone who would listen that the greatest danger was not Earth's weapons, but the Council's fear. On the horizon, the crew worked in silence to repair damage. The hull bore new scars, but the heart of the ship was strong. Laura gathered her people in the mess hall. She told them they had proven themselves again, but the cost of fear was heavy. She said every battle fought made peace harder to reach. She reminded them that their mission was not conquest but survival. She asked them to hold on to that truth, no matter how the galaxy twisted. Claire shared her maps with Laura, showing new routes they could take, hidden lanes that could keep them safe. Mark spoke of training more, of keeping every hand sharp and ready. The crew agreed. They would not rest, for they carried more than their own lives. They carried the weight of Earth's return. Back on the Citadel, Karen faced the hardest battle of all. She stood before the council and told them what they feared to hear. She said they could not win by force. She said humanity had endured in silence for generations and had returned stronger. She said if the council chose war, the galaxy would drown in fire. Many refused to believe, but some listened. Small voices rose in support of patience, of talks, of seeking common ground. The chamber had not yet chosen, but seeds had been planted. Daniel told Karen that truth often grows slowly. He said lies and fear move fast, but truth endures. Karen nodded and said, then they must endure as well. She said they must keep speaking until the galaxy understood. And so the horizon sailed on, through dust and stars, a lone ship carrying the weight of a world. The galaxy watched with dread and wonder. Some prayed for its fall, others for its protection. But none could deny what had been shown. Humanity had returned, and no fleet could erase that truth. The horizon drifted beyond the battlefields it had left behind, carrying with it the silence of victory and the weight of fear. Across the galaxy, the name of Earth spread faster than light. Traders told stories of the warship in hushed voices. Soldiers spoke of it in barracks, calling it unstoppable. Children played games in markets, pretending to be humans who stood against entire fleets. Some voices spoke with awe, others with dread, but none denied that humanity had returned. On the bridge, Captain Laura Bennett sat in her chair, her eyes fixed on the star maps ahead. She thought of the battles they had fought, of the restraint they had shown, and of the lives spared. She knew every choice she made was shaping the story of her people. Mark Rivera checked the gunnery coils again, though they were already steady. He said the guns were ready if needed. Claire Donovan worked on her maps, her fingers tracing new paths and hidden routes. She said there were still places in the galaxy untouched by war, and perhaps those places would give them allies. The crew moved with quiet purpose. They knew they were no longer just travelers. They were symbols. Every action mattered. Every word spoken to a stranger would echo through the galaxy. Laura reminded them of this each day. She said they must be strong, but they must also be careful. She said strength without care was only another kind of weakness. In the Council Citadel, chaos ruled. Ambassador Lyric shouted for war, his pride louder than his reason. Elder Soren answered with calm words, saying humanity had proven both its power and its patience. Karen Mitchell stood before the chamber, her voice steady though her heart was heavy. She said the Council had already tried force and had failed. She said Earth could not be erased. She said the choice now was not whether humanity would stand, but whether the galaxy would stand with them or against them. Daniel Harris added his voice, reminding the Council that the horizon had spared ships when it could have destroyed them all. He said that was not the action of conquerors, but of survivors seeking peace. Still, fear twisted through the chamber. Some leaders plotted in secret, dreaming of traps and schemes. Others began to send quiet messages to the horizon, hoping to secure alliances. The chamber was divided, but the truth was growing too large to hide. Humanity was back, and nothing would change that. One night, Laura stood alone on the forward deck. She looked out at the stars and thought of Earth. She thought of the families waiting, of the hidden cities that had endured in silence for generations. She thought of the children who would one day walk these stars freely. She promised herself that she would not let fear steal that future. She whispered that promise into the quiet hum of the ship. The horizon traveled to small stations and lonely outposts, offering trade and knowledge. They gave charts of safe routes in exchange for food and fuel. Some captains welcomed them. Some turned away in fear. At one outpost, an old miner named David Green shook Laura's hand and said he had always believed the old stories. He said his grandfather told him humans would return. Laura smiled and said the stories had carried them through the dark. Mark trained new crew members each day. He reminded them that strength was not about firepower, but about control. He told them to breathe steady, to aim carefully, to act only when needed. Claire shared her maps with the crew, teaching them how to read hidden signs in the stars. She said maps were the memory of a people, and that every path she drew was a step toward a shared future. The crew listened, knowing that each lesson was part of a larger purpose. Back in the Citadel, Karen faced endless battles of words. She spoke to anyone who would listen. She said humanity sought peace. She said war would only bring ruin. Daniel spread reports, writing them in clear and simple words so that even the smallest envoys could understand. Slowly, small voices in the chamber began to agree. They spoke of patience, of talks, of seeking common ground. The tide was slow, but it was turning. Then came the moment that changed everything. A message was sent to the horizon from the council itself, not from a faction or a secret plot, but from the full chamber. They asked for a formal meeting. They asked for talks of alliance, of trade, of coexistence. Laura read the message and sat in silence for a long time. She knew this was the turning point. She gathered her crew and told them the time had come to speak not only for themselves but for all of Earth. The horizon arrived at the chosen station, its hull scarred but proud. Fleets from across the galaxy gathered to watch. Some came in fear, others in hope. The docking ring glowed with lights as Laura and her officers walked into the meeting hall. Karen stood waiting, her face calm, her eyes steady. Daniel held records under his arm, ready to write history. Elder Soren gave a small nod of respect. Even Lyrics, though scowling, stayed silent. Laura spoke first. She said she came from Earth. She said her people had endured silence and hardship. She said they had returned not to conquer, but to live, to trade, to be respected. She said they would defend themselves if attacked, but they would not seek war. She said humanity's greatest weapon was not its guns, but its spirit, a spirit that refused to break. The chamber listened in silence. Some looked afraid, others hopeful. Karen added her voice, saying she had seen this spirit herself. She said humanity had shown restraint, discipline, and care. Daniel read the records aloud, reminding them of every choice the horizon had made to avoid destruction. Slowly, voices began to rise in support. One envoy said they should welcome Earth. Another said they should learn from their strength. The tide was shifting. Lyric shouted once more, calling for caution, but his words were weaker than before. The chamber had seen too much. They had seen fleets fall. They had seen restraint. They had heard simple truth spoken without pride. The vote was cast, and though not all agreed, the chamber chose to recognize Earth as a sovereign power. It was not full peace, but it was a beginning. Laura returned to the horizon with her crew. She told them what had been decided. She told them this was only the first step, but it was a step forward. Mark smiled and said it was worth every scar. Claire said the map she had drawn would now guide not only them, but others who would follow. The crew cheered softly, their voices echoing in the metal halls. They knew history had changed. That night, Laura stood once more on the forward deck. She looked out at the stars and thought of the journey ahead. She knew there would be more battles, more fear, more trials, but she also knew they had opened a door. Humanity was no longer hidden. Humanity had stepped into the light. She whispered to herself that Earth would rise again, not as a conqueror, but as a survivor who refused to be forgotten. And so the horizon sailed on, carrying with it the spirit of a world reborn. The galaxy watched, some with fear, some with hope, but all knew one truth. From nowhere, an Earth warship had appeared, and the universe would never forget it.